Hello and welcome into the most recent edition of ESPN FC. Kay Murray, Casey Keller, Stuart Robson and Craig Burley here in the studio. A little later on, we will be talking Club World Cup quarter-finals. But before we do, big news today that Nico Williams will actually be staying at Athletic Club. He has signed a new long-term deal at the club, a 10-year one at that, extending his contract with Athletic until 2035. We've seen this officially announced on social media. Here we see a figure that we don't know who this is. Rating win, 2035 on the mural of his face in Bilbao. And then he comes and reveals himself. It is Nico Williams himself.
Cuando hay que tomar decisiones, para mí lo que pesa más es el corazón. Estoy donde quiero estar, con los míos. Esta es mi casa. A Patreti.
Gemma Soler joining us now from Barcelona, our Barcelona correspondent, to talk more about this, because obviously this Nico Williams had once again this summer, Gemma, been a big top transfer target for Barcelona. What's happened? He's staying at Athletic.
Yes, he is once again the same story as we lived last summer, and here in Barcelona there is a big sense of disappointment. Actually, the club feels that they were somehow used to get a better renewal offer, because the thing is that yes, they tried to pursue the signing last summer, but not at the beginning of this transfer market, because they thought it was impossible. He decided to stay, but it was the player himself, his agent, his entourage that approached Barcelona, saying publicly that he might be interested in joining Barcelona, playing next to Lamine Yamal. The agent was in Barcelona a couple of weeks ago. There were talks, there was a formal offer. It was in the offices of Nico Williams' agent. And there was no formal offer. Actually, Barcelona found themselves publicly with a video we've just seen earlier this morning that he's staying. So there is a big disappointment. They feel kind of used. And it's true that they could feel it in the last 48 hours, because they were trying to include in the offer some clause that was very difficult to accomplish by Barcelona, because they wanted some kind of interest of registering, and they felt that the negotiations were not going so well as a couple of weeks ago, and eventually he is staying, and there is a big sense of disappointing. Well, for Athletic Club, for La Liga, they were saying publicly that it would be difficult to Barcelona to register him, because they are still not able to sign in the 1-1 rule because of their financial problems. So we'll never know if the possible registering problems were the main reason for Nico not joining Barcelona, or is the sense that, as he said in this video, Athletic Club is the club of his heart, of his family, of his brother, and also having the dream of playing the Champions League alongside his brother in the club of his heart made his decision.
What do you make of this? It's a second summer running. Nico Williams being the target for Barcelona.
What do you make of it?
What, yeah.
Most hypocritical. Join the other hypocrites. His heart's an Athletic Club. He would have went to Barcelona in a heartbeat, wouldn't he, if it could have happened. But he didn't. So it's more BS from players about, I love it here and never wanted to be anywhere else.
You said that many times when you were at Chelsea and Derby, didn't you? You used to punch the badge and all that sort of stuff?
Kiss the badge.
Kiss the badge.
Kiss the badge.
Do you think this is a problem, though, Craig?
Just a few things.
That we're hearing that players want written guarantees for registration, that there are financial issues at Barcelona, that it could prevent them getting the players that they want.
That's their problem. I don't know. That's their issue. We just opened with Nico Williams, and he asked me, and I'm just saying, here we have somebody going through all that rigmarole of spray painting and all that nonsense with videos about his love for the club, and let's be honest about it. And I'm not blaming him for it. You had a chance to go to Barcelona, you'd have been there in a heartbeat. So spare me all the sort of heartwarming story that he wanted to be there for the rest of his career. His big move was to play alongside Lamine Yamal, and for whatever reason that can't happen. Barca's problems are Barca's problems. I couldn't care less. They need to deal with it. They've got a great team, they've got a great manager. They were head and shoulders the best last year. They were the most consistent. They had the best shape. Their defensive unit was excellent, and they played the best football by far, and they had the best front three in European football. They can go again without a Nico Williams or anybody else, as long as they don't get too many injuries. The one issue I always have, when a team is successful, I think that is a good time to go out and push forward, like Liverpool have.
Yeah.
You know, Liverpool have gone out and they've made a statement.
You got to freshen it up.
And I know, I'm sorry to bring that up in terms of Florian Wirtz, because I know Liverpool is just such a touching story at the moment with the tragedy that has happened. But from a football balance, they've gone out and made a statement with their signing of Wirtz. Barcelona, I don't know if they have the ability to go and do the same because of the issues that they have.
But I think they need a wide player that's not going to want to be in the team every week. Somebody that's going to come into the side when Yamal needs a rest, when Rafinha needs a rest. And I don't think that's Nico Williams. So I think it's best for both parties that he doesn't go there.
I thought it was pretty funny what Gemma said, that Barcelona felt used. Because Barcelona's never used, we're Barcelona to our advantage. Ask Ter Stegen how he felt about the new signing of the goalkeeper. Didn't Deku come out and just say, I don't have to tell him anything? So always funny to your hypocritical side of stuff, how the clubs feel like they've been taken advantage of, except for when they take advantage of somebody else. So look, great work from Nico's agent. If it wasn't going to happen and he got more money out of Athletic Club, brilliant.
And you were saying earlier on, that Athletic Club have to pay big wages because there's not that many Barca players around. So they have to keep their very best players at Athletic Club because they only play Barca players. And if you allow your best Barca players to go, what's following up?
Right. You can allow them to go to a point, but then if there is that idea that, hey, look, we'll break the bank a little bit to keep you here because we can't just go in world football. We can't go to Argentina. We can't go to Brazil. We can't go to France. Well, a couple players in France just kind of fit in that little Basque window, Liz Razou or whoever. But, yeah, you're really stuck with a Basque player. And when you have them, you pay them.
And the fact that they perform the way they do.
Correct. It's insane.
It is
the
insane.
Talent pool that they're able to pull.
It is insane, the fact that they play the type of football they have in that fantastic stadium that they have with that great atmosphere. And the fact that maybe bar for injuries, they should have won the Europa League last year. They kind of threw that away. Now, I know they had some injuries. Nico Williams, I think.
Was one of them.
It was one of them. But the fact they do it, how they do it, and continue to be able to produce the type of football they produce and get the type of results they get, is quite amazing. But I go back to Robbo's point, which I totally agree with. Nico Williams would have became, I think, another player at Barcelona they already have 3 or 4 of. And 3 or 4 that did a really good job last year. Coming in, Ferran Torres, Gavi from injury, Fermin Lopez.
Dani
Olmo, who we touched on his injury issues from RB Leipzig. Would they raise their head again? And they kind of did.
Well, and all the drama of, am I registered? Am I not registered? And
because of certain games he couldn't play because he wasn't registered at one point.
Trying to deal with that.
You've even got the likes of Ansu Fati, who went back from a disappointing spell at Brighton, and who just was sort of saturated into this bench and was hardly used. Now, this guy was, at one point...
He was Lamine Yamal.
The next big thing. So I don't think in that sense it's probably a bad thing for Nico Williams. I'm sure his heart was probably set deep down. Who wouldn't want to play for a successful team like
because
that?
you can only ever, in modern football, you only ever get classed as a world-class player or a great player when you win big things. You can be a fantastic footballer, but unless you win big things, you're not classed as a great footballer or a world-class footballer. And at Athletic Club, he's never going to win the Champions League, I don't think, and he's probably not going to win La Liga. So he will never be classed in the same vein as the other players.
So if you said, Robbo, that's not their biggest area of need, where do they need to reinforce to try and defend that title next year?
I would say they don't need to reinforce too much in terms of personnel. They need to work even harder at the defensive side of the game that Craig was talking about. They play this high offside line, which we all talked about. And if you work at it over and over again, they're going to get better at it. Because there was games last season where they could have got broken down, and they did get broken down. But they did it well enough for long periods to say that they're a good side. they've got one of the best midfield players in the world at the moment, Pedri. He was magnificent last season. Frankie de Jong, I thought, was excellent. The player that probably might just fall by the wayside is Gavi, because he didn't come back well from his injury. So maybe another central midfield player that can really pull the strings. But again, they've got to pick players that aren't going to be first-team players, because the first-team players that they had last year is very difficult to improve on because, as you said, they were outstanding.
What about centre-half? Inigo Martinez and Pau Cubarsí did particularly well. I'm a huge fan of Cubarsí because he's still a teenager, and Martinez, experienced player, did well. He's never fancied Ronald Araujo.
No.
I don't think he fancies Eric Garcia either, and he obviously played him at right back towards the end. He sort of fell in, played him in midfield as well. So does he need some extra... If it's not a starting centre-half, does he need some extra cover there?
Yeah.
And don't forget, in the midfield positions, two youngsters that did particularly well for them last year who got injured, Marc Casado
Bernal.
and Bernal, who got injured at Valencia, I think, and he did his cruciate. But Hansi Flick had saw enough in him to put him in the side. They're going to be, I would imagine, fit and available again for selection. Now, I'm not suggesting they're going to start, but they come back into the squad. So it's just how Hansi Flick sees their potential, how he sees their ability to affect and enhance the squad, whether they go out and spend. But I definitely think, the left-back position is Baldi's, the right-back position is Koundé's. It's whether he thinks he needs to strengthen in the middle of that back line, which is, of course, it's hugely important when you're playing such a high offside.
But then it's also the point you made earlier with Liverpool, is sometimes it's nice to refresh it a little bit and push people, make a signing so people are saying, we're not comfortable.
Yep.
Because Real Madrid's gonna make a push next year. They're not gonna roll over 2 seasons in a row. Atletico's making signings to try to be better than what we all thought their squad was good enough to truly challenge, and then they went on that huge run, and then they couldn't sustain it. So if you kind of get stuck in that situation of, well, we don't need to make any signings. We're good. Everybody's comfortable.
We saw 2 teams last year that did try and change one or two. And you're absolutely right. You do need to freshen things up. Real Madrid, Champions League winners.
Correct.
La Liga winners. They go and buy supposedly the best player in the world.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, it doesn't work out for them. He still scores goals, but they lose that formation, they lose that continuity, they lose that fluidity.
Just the edge.
And Bayer Leverkusen, having been unbeaten the previous season, they make 1 or 2 changes and they think they've improved the squad, but they don't work quite so hard. It doesn't quite work for them. So it's a danger to go and bring players in that are going to go straight into the team. I think they need, and Craig's absolutely right, I think they probably need centre-halves that if Nico Martinez are injured and if Cubarsí are injured, they come in and fit the bill.
But it is sometimes a good message from a manager, to your point, when you have had almost a perfect season. I mean, if they win the Champions League...
It was pretty darn close,
I mean, he called it spectacular when asked, as it was, and it's hard to argue against that, because they threw it away in Milan against Inter, if we're being honest about it. But is it not a good message sometimes, even if you're not upsetting the apple cart or the team or changing much, to bring in 1 or 2 where the other players go, oh, he's not entirely happy.
Well, they did in the goalkeeper position.
But even in this attacking position, this is what we might be seeing, because now they haven't got Nico Williams. Gemma, they do have their eyes on another player or 2. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, we will see what happens with Nico Williams in the future, but the sense here in Barcelona is that he has ultimately shut down any chance in the future to join Barcelona, but we've seen wars with Mbappe and Real Madrid. We'll see. Yeah, they have I kind of agree with Craig that maybe in the fullbacks they might be having more needs, but it's not what they are looking for. The sports direction are looking for a winger, and Nico Williams was not the first option for sports director Deco, has never been, but Joan Laporta and all the board of members and the players, Lamine Yamal, were so insistent on Nico that he was convinced eventually. But he has always had his eyes in Luis Diaz in Liverpool. Of course, the talks are paused right now for the tragic news about Diego Jota, but they will try to pursue this signing. But it looks really difficult for Barcelona's financial situation, because this signing is even bigger than what they were about to pay for Nico Williams with the 60 million release clause. They also have eyes in Marcus Rashford. there are some concerns or some doubts that is Marcus Rashford going to improve what Rafinha, Ferran Torres or other players in the academy can bring to the team. But this is the main goal. They think that with the goalkeeper reinforcement and what they have in the academy, they can fulfill everything. As you were talking about Marc Bernal and the midfield, they feel that this position is already covered. Marc Bernal is at the 75% of his recovery. He told himself today in Catalonia, so we won't be seeing him in the beginning of the season, but probably in November, December, he will be fully fit. And we will see, they will try to pursue a signing because they have the feeling that they needed to have some more sparkle in the final third in that decisive part of the season, that there were some injuries and eventually they didn't have that much quality, or at least at the bench.
That's interesting, isn't it? They didn't have enough sparkle in the final.
Yeah, and they scored more goals than any team in the...
They were the most sparkling team in Europe to watch, even when they had Lewandowski out the side.
But was that also why there was a little bit of talk about potentially Jonathan David from Lille? Because he's a free. He ended up going to Juventus, but where you could then bring somebody in, not having to break the bank. Yeah, you could pay a decent wage, but you expect that at Barcelona. And then have somebody that maybe isn't of the ego or the caliber to say, I should be playing ahead of Lewandowski, but knowing that Lewandowski's...
They've also got options, and they did it last season because of the way they play and they're in possession of the ball most of the time. Even when Ferran Torres came into the side as a wide player, he didn't play out wide, he came in and supported Lewandowski. And Balde becomes the left winger because they have so much possession, and he's playing in the wide left position. They've got two up front, and they've still got Lamine Yamal on the right-hand side. So I just don't think there's an actual desperate need to go and get another attacking player. Dani Olmo, on his day last season, when he was fit, looked outstanding playing in the number 10 role.
I mean, it's going to be intriguing watching the start of the La Liga season because it seems to me with what's coming out of the recruitment side at Barcelona, and Gemma has touched on it, they're hell-bent on buying a wide player. That's been muted for a couple of months now. And we just saw that graphic on Rafinha. His numbers last year, I mean, we know all about Lamine Yamal's performances, which were outstanding, but Rafinha was equally as good in a different...
He had a career year.
Yeah, and it wasn't, and it was in a different sense. It wasn't always about beating players and whipping a ball in. It was about timing runs. But he was timing runs from the outside, from the left side position to into that space where a striker had dropped off or a striker, Lewandowski had made a run, and he was attacking that space. I think it's a difficult conversation to have for Hansi Flick, but it seems that it's one that he might be having if he gets a wide player to move Rafinha from a wider position into this number 10 role. Which
Easier
is
to see his runs, though, from number 10?
Well,
You're talking about those great runs from outside to in, running in between the full-back and the centre, just who picks him up, and he timed them absolutely brilliantly, particularly in the first half of the season.
And the willingness to do it. Because let's be honest, how many times in modern football are you seeing a guy making a 40-yard run to maybe get in at the back post? Well, I'll go if I'm going to get the ball. But when you can consistently do that, I don't know how you move him central.
But he was brilliant at it, and he was absolutely brilliant at it. But we keep hearing these rumours from Barca that they want to move him. Hansi Flick sees that, and they want this wide player. And as you said, when you're in the number 10 role, it's a different dynamic. You got a guy here, you got a guy that you got some. All of a sudden, you got one holding midfielder, and sometimes two. They'll just sit in front of the back four, and all of a sudden, that space is not there to make those runs into, and it just changes the whole picture. And the question would be, do Barcelona really desperately need to change that picture when you've had so much? Now, maybe he moves Rafinha into a central role and he continues this great goal-scoring run. But I would suggest he found most of his space last year just coming off that left-hand side and letting Balde go forward and making those runs in behind for those balls over the top, which he was brilliant at. But again, it's why Flick gets paid the big bucks, and we'll see what Barcelona do come the start of the season. But it is one of the interesting talking points.
Yes, and there's no doubt we'll be talking to you again about this soon. Gemma Soler, thank you so much for joining us on the latest edition of FC. You can keep up to date with all the transfer talk over on our website. So there we go, Fluminense with the 2-1 win. They are through to the semi-finals. Frank Leboeuf is joining us now to talk more about this, but we will have a Brazilian team, at least one, in the semi-finals, Stuart.
Yes, and I think they probably just about deserved it for the first 60, 70 minutes of the game. Al Hilal had a great sort of last 10, 15 minutes where they got lots of crosses into the box and caused lots of pressure. But a couple of good goals. They defended quite well. And, yeah, good performance from them.
I've always said, for what it's worth, not a lot, really, to be honest, for me coming in this competition. But I think it would be apt if one of the Brazilian, South American sides won it, because it just means more to them, means more to the supporters. Al Hilal, bunch of mercenaries, good players, really good players. This was their big moment, wasn't it? The Club World Cup, for them anyway, because nobody will care less, but they'll, you know, mosey on back to Saudi Arabia, and nobody will bat an eyelid about the league, and they'll get paid well. It's just a shame that they're actually, when you look at the team, there's so many good players in that.
Milinkovic-Savic.
Milinkovic-Savic, who was brilliant in Italy for a long period. You know, there's
Koulibaly, who was probably the best centre-half in Europe at one point.
He went to Chelsea, had a bad time. Kim goes to Bayern, he's a bad time. But, you know, so it is a shame in a sense. Look, and Lodi, who was at Atletico Madrid, and the list goes on. And they put up a good fist in this competition, but these guys here, they've basically, you know, at the end of the day, well, if we're being honest, they've just sold themselves out to go and play in Saudi Arabia. So this was for them the big sort of platform, and they didn't disgrace themselves, but they just came up short.
So in the game here, in that closing moments, Frank, I know that you disagree with what Casey said with that moment with Koulibaly and the penalty decision.
So at a certain point where you start the run and you grab each other, you have to let go. And one does it, and the other one doesn't know. And I've been in that position. And I think there is a real foul, because when the ball comes, you have to be free. And the guy never let Koulibaly free at a certain point to hit the ball. So therefore, for me, yeah, that was a penalty.
There's no consistency in this, as we heard last year from the Premier League and others in Europe, that they were going to really clamp down on this kind of thing. And that was going to help try and eradicate most of the holding within the box from a set piece or a dangerous area. We saw, and I think the problem came with the consistency, we saw some calls given last year around Europe and others that were head scratchers that were not. And I think that is where the difficulty is when the holding takes place, is when is the right time? When is it the right time to let go?
What Frank's saying, you can hold on to each other until the ball's just about to be headed in or defended. But for me, Koulibaly started it by wrapping his arm round the defender's head. And once that takes place, the referee, I don't think, was ever going to give a penalty for that. You know, Koulibaly has tried to force a penalty there by putting his arm round the defender's neck to start with, and then let go, as Frank said, at an important moment, but not a penalty.
But it just seems in the game in general, this has become more of a problem.
But what I don't understand is, why do defenders want to grab hold of attackers now that the VAR looks at everything going on? Years ago, you didn't grab hold of people, you held them on one side, and there was no VAR, so you weren't going to get penalties given against you. But now, when you can get penalties given against you, people start to grab forwards. It's madness.
No, because it's allowed. And that's to Craig's point. If they start actually looking at it, even through VAR as well, and going, hey, you can't bear hug somebody in the box, so okay, penalty, done.
You have a look over last season, how many penalties were given. There was a lot of penalties given.
So even with how you feel about that, Frank, you do think that Fluminense were deserving winners tonight?
I would say so, yeah. They were more consistent. There were some ups and downs, and we saw the team, clicking and suddenly disappearing. But overall, I have to say that I think Fluminense deserve to go through, and they show more qualities than Al Hilal. And on top of it, I'm pleased because seeing Thiago Silva, carrying and maybe playing against his former team, Chelsea, that can be something nice.
He's 40 now, isn't he?
I think also Bono made some nice saves for Al Hilal as well. So, I think when you look at the run of play and different things, and when you know, your goalkeeper's asked to make some big saves, to give him the opportunity for that late flourish like you talked about.
And also, they were the more adventurous side in the first half.
Yeah.
Al Hilal played with a back three, but it was a back five when they didn't have the ball. You couldn't say the same about Fluminense. They were a back three and their two wing-backs were pushed on a little bit. So they were the side that wanted to control the game in that first half, first 50, 60 minutes.
Okay. The winner of this game, we know, will be taking on the winner of the game between Palmeiras and Chelsea, which will be played tonight at the time of recording. Enzo Maresca has said that we may see João Pedro in this game this evening.
Joao's situation is a bit strange or different because, you know, he was on holiday, and even if he was working, but it's not the same when you work for yourself compared when you work with a team. But we are very, very happy with Joao. In the last 2 days, he worked with us, and we see if we need it tomorrow or we have a chance to give him some minutes. We're gonna give him some minutes.
And is your old team going to progress and prevent an all-Brazilian semi-final tonight?
Hopefully, yes. I don't really understand the meaning of playing João Pedro. I know we go back to the question, you know, is it the ending of a season or the beginning of the new one? I thought it was the ending, and therefore I don't want to see João Pedro, but whatever, it is what it is. It's going to be a very exciting game because it can go either way. Yeah, everybody can see that, and I agree with Craig. I think Brazilians deserve to win that competition because it means more to them than to any European team. I don't know if the Palmeiras will be pleased to play against Fluminense. I think it's going to be more exotic to play Chelsea than Palmeiras, a team that they know very well. But obviously, with my past, you know, I have to say that I really hope that Chelsea are going to go through.
Okay,
I
one
love
word
the little
prediction.
smirk on Maresca's face when he talked about João Pedro being on holiday, but he's been working.
Yeah.
But not. It's this not the same as we often when we're on holiday, you know.
Yeah, you gotta tick over.
Up and down the beach.
I did see you on holiday. You were running in the pool. You were doing
Yeah,
all
but
sorts.
Craig, running to the bar doesn't count.
All right, one word predictions from both of you ahead of tonight, Palmeiras or Chelsea?
Good grief. Palmeiras.
Stuart?
I'm going to go with Chelsea.
All right.
I'm thinking
Casey?
Chelsea as well.
You're thinking Chelsea as well. There you go. We'll find out. Won't be long until you will find out, and we will be talking more about that game on tomorrow's show. But that is the quarterfinal that is coming up tonight at 9 p.m. in Philadelphia. On Saturday, look at these two big heavyweight clashes. PSG taking on Bayern at 12 p.m. Eastern, and Real Madrid against Dortmund a little later in the day. All matches streaming live on DAZN. So let's focus on that match between PSG and Bayern Munich, which will be taking place in Atlanta. Recent history between them, as you can see, very much favours Bayern Munich. There is, of course, that quarter-final in the 2021 season. PSG went through them, but then, of course, the final back in 2020, which saw Bayern Munich win the Champions League. So recent history certainly favours Bayern Munich. Alexis, however, has been at PSG's training session today, and she's had a chance to speak to some of the players. There she is. Hello, Alexis. Tell us more about what you've been seeing today.
Hey, Kay, yes, indeed. We arrived in Atlanta. We went to PSG's training session this morning. They had a 2-hour training session that started at 10 a.m. under some scorching heat. I think watching that, I was finally able to understand what Marcos Llorente said when he felt like his toenails were burning, because that's exactly how I felt here in Atlanta. We were allowed to film and observe the last 15 minutes. By then, Luis Enrique was long gone. They were just kind of going through the paces, practicing some shots at goal from outside of the box. And then we actually got to speak to some of the players like Ousmane Dembele as well as Seny Mayulu. And of course, one of the biggest topics that the players were asked about was the unfortunate passing of Diogo Jota. You will know that PSG has 4 Portuguese players who were teammates of Jota. All of the players definitely expressed their condolences, talked about what they're doing to try and lift the spirits of Jota's Portuguese teammates on PSG. They said that they are trying to create a support bubble for them and see exactly how they are doing before before this game, but they were also able to answer some questions about this game against Bayern Munich, because as you explained, going up against Bayern Munich, PSG Bayern Munich feels like on paper a Champions League final. It has been a Champions League final, but it is coming at an interesting time of the season. PSG seems so relaxed. Bayern, we know, are taking this very seriously, but we spoke to Dembele and Mayula, and they gave us a little taste of how they're taking this game, and even said that they may take it as seriously as a Champions League final.
Une équipe très difficile. Voilà, c'est une équipe où j'ai beaucoup de respect. Ça, dans ma carrière, j'ai pas très bien réussi face à cette équipe. Voilà, c'est un club exceptionnel. Voilà, où la mentalité de ce club, la mentalité de l'équipe aussi. Mais voilà, c'est un match de football, on verra ce qui va se passer demain. Mais on va tout donner. Il y a beaucoup de choses qui ont changé. Voilà, les joueurs ont clairement élevé le niveau, j'ai élevé mon niveau aussi. Et voilà, on a énormément de confiance. On sait ce qu'on doit faire sur le terrain pour battre n'importe quelle équipe. Et puis on verra demain. C'est ça une équipe, c'est ça la mentalité de chaque joueur. Si tu veux jouer au Paris Saint-Germain, tu dois te battre pour chacun des titres. Et voilà, c'est ça, sinon tu peux pas conquérir ou gagner des titres. Il faut rester concentré parce qu'on sait que c'est un titre important aussi, même si on a gagné les 4. Et voilà, on n'est pas très loin, on sait ça, et on va tout faire pour aller au bout. Je pense surtout la concentration et mettre du rythme, jouer notre jeu aussi, parce que quoi qu'il arrive, durant toute la saison, on a joué comme d'habitude. Et voilà, je pense que c'est ça la clé, et aussi surtout bien défendre parce que c'est une équipe redoutable aussi. De la finale de la Champions, je ne sais pas, après, je pense que c'est le même niveau. La finale de la Ligue des Champions a été difficile, même si on a survolé cette finale. Et puis voilà, il faut respecter les équipes, on va tout donner jusqu'au bout. Et puis voilà.
Yeah, well, it was interesting to hear from them. And all I have to say is after this, I need Frank to teach me some French lessons ASAP, because I was struggling trying to understand them. But thankfully, we got to translate it. And I thought it was interesting what Dembele said about how he at least is taking this game seriously. He hasn't exactly played that much, of course. He did come off the bench in the last game. And he says he's kind of gunning for a good performance against Bayern. In his career, he's played against them 13 times, mainly while he was at Borussia Dortmund. And he's only managed 2 goals in his all-time career against Bayern Munich. So they have been a thorn in his side, but we do know one of those goals came just last year in the Champions League group stages. And I think that the Ousmane Dembele that we see today is very different from the Ousmane Dembele that we saw at Dortmund back in 2017. 8 years have passed. He's one of the best players in the world right now. So I think he's going to bring that extra competitive spark against Bayern Munich.
Okay, Frank, there you go. PSG, you've got your eyes on the prize for them. They're taking it seriously.
They do, and they have the right to do so. You know what I like about it is the fact that we can see, I was seeing the game that they lost against Bayern Munich, but it's a different story. It's a different club. Alexis just talked about Dembele and the fact that he increased his football, is more into it, and but it's everybody. It's the entire club, which is different than before. And so the past is the past, and it's going to be very difficult for Bayern Munich to beat Paris Saint-Germain. That's what it is. That's the reality of it, and I think naturally Paris Saint-Germain are favourites for that game.
Even talking about this in the same sentence as Champions League and Champions League finals is just bonkers. Actually, Gianni Infantino himself has been out trying to talk this competition up and calling it drama-filled. And Oliver Kay in the Times, amongst others, wrote a column in the last 24 hours calling it risible at best, to even discuss it in those terms with slashed ticket prices and all the problems that there's been having. But there's no doubt this is a big game. It's just how both teams will take it. And I never quite understand when we use graphics for any team or any competition that's historically looking at results, as if that, as Frank has touched on it, as if that correlates to where we are today. Because we saw Ousmane Dembele in the interview, who was exceptional last year, but then again, he was one of 11, at least, that were exceptional. And I think, although Bayern won the league, I think exceptional would not be one way to describe them. And unless something's changed in 5 weeks, where PSG destroyed Inter Milan and were by far in the second half of the season the best team in Europe, unless something has changed, then all those results that have gone Bayern's way, now, are really, it's kind of pointless in a sense because Bayern could win the game, but there's no doubt PSG are the best team in Europe. They proved that last year. The big question is, and it gets to this point, is how much desire and seriousness do they take into this? Because you're not in the Allianz Arena in a Champions League final with absolutely everything on the line. And boy, did they put up one of their best performances. And so that's going to be the big difference.
It is Mercedes-Benz Stadium, though. Does that help?
You don't.
But
not really.
Better conditions.
No, I just think that I just keep waiting for PSG to finally run out of steam and just go, it's time for
a rest.
It's time for a rest. And are Bayern in that little bit of a situation where maybe the Bundesliga finished a little earlier? They had a little.
Do you think Luis Enrique would have wished deep down that they had just sort of
tanked it?
Yeah. No, but I mean that in a good way with another big season coming up to see if he can replicate. Because if their trajectory can keep going the way it's going, which is going to be difficult, by the way, because they were almost unplayable in the second half of the season. But surely for them now, I mean, Robert, where is the next? We're talking about Barcelona earlier in the show, how to push players. How do you push Lamine Yamal? How do you push, Rafinha? How do you push De Jong? How do these PSG players push themselves?
The only thing I would say about PSG and pushing themselves, they weren't an outstanding team for the first period of the season.
They struggled in the Champions League.
And Bayern beat them in the league phase.
And they weren't particularly good. I saw them at Arsenal where they lost the game and they were absolutely pathetic.
Didn't they get a late goal against Girona in the group stage?
They were awful in most of the games.
Yeah.
So their run has only started, probably I would say about from November onwards. So they're still in that run and they still want to play. They're enjoying their football at the moment. I saw the game. I haven't seen that many games in this competition, but I saw the Inter Miami game. And while it was against Inter Miami, who couldn't run and the front players were doing nothing, their work rate and their ability to win the ball back and play at a tempo was second to none. It was an absolutely outstanding performance against a weaker side. But their sort of determination to play well was still there.
Sure, I would take it even earlier in the competition when you open the competition by dismantling Atletico Madrid 4-0. That's not Inter Miami, it's Atletico Madrid. And I think
I didn't see that game, so excuse me on that one.
It's okay, but I think where PSG has really been able to benefit in this tournament is it wasn't your league finished, you got 2-3 weeks. Do we keep the guys together? Do we give them time off? We don't know how much time. Now we got to fly to America. They went basically from the final right into the competition. So there wasn't that lag. So it was almost like they never had to catch back up. And I think that's what
he's
really
playing the best team.
Yeah, and they are the best team. And I think that's what threw Atletico Madrid off is it was seamless when they came into this competition.
How do you see this game in particular then going? You've got PSG winning it.
I have got PSG winning it. Bayern might have a problem because whenever I've seen PSG play, at the moment, the rotation in midfield, their ability to keep the ball, to work the opposition, Bayern like to win the ball back as quickly as they can. That's the way that the manager has them playing. The two centre-halves leave themselves sometimes 2v2. The full-backs push in, they try and press up. Now, if they do it well, they might cause PSG one or two problems. But if PSG play beyond that pressure and their midfield get a grip in the game, the likes of Tar, the new signing Tar and Upamecano might have a problem. Lima down that right-hand side as well, a right back who I think is good going forward but can't defend particularly well. And I think Stanisic's played in the last game. Again, a player that's decent on the ball, but I'm not sure he's a good 1v1 defender. And that's what they're going to have to do in this game against PSG. So I can only see PSG dominating the game and winning it.
I've just noticed something.
What's that? Delamar, yeah.
I've looked at lots of notes.
Yeah. I actually did some research.
Wow.
Yeah.
You've never had that before in this studio?
Because I haven't seen all the games, that's why. See?
But he was honest about it.
Aren't we all?
Yep. Alexis, we need you to be honest about why you've picked Bayern. You've been there with the PSG boys today, but you're still going for Bayern.
Yeah, what's
do you
wrong
know
with
what,
you?
Kay? I'm just going to say it's going to come down. I know, Frank, I'm sorry. I still think PSG 100% the better team overall. There's no arguments there. I just wonder, as Craig was saying, if they're 100% up for it. If they're really up for it, then of course PSG all day, every day. But it wasn't only barely a month ago that they won the Champions League. Bayern, though, really do seem up for it. I've hung out with them for quite some time. We spoke to a couple of the players. Thomas Muller is on his farewell tour saying they're in it to win it. They have players like Leon Goretzka, Serge Gnabry, who were constantly linked with moves away from Bayern, but they talked about how desperate they were to stay. So I feel like they have a little point to prove. Leon Goretzka has been scoring. So I just feel like Bayern may be a bit more up for this battle than PSG. They've been fielding strong teams. So I'm just going to go with Bayern in this one. I have to mix things up, right?
Yes, why not? Thanks so much for joining us, Alexis. Enjoy those games. We'll be speaking to you again very soon, and make sure to stay up to date with all of Alexis's reports over on our YouTube channel, ESPN FC, keeping you up to date with everything that's going on. Here's another one for you then, Craig. Real Madrid and Borussia Dortmund's history. We've got it all time here, and of course we'll cast our eyes back to that 2024 Champions League final when Real Madrid beat Borussia Dortmund. They will be facing each other again here in the quarterfinals. It's a perfect chance though, Stuart, to ask what you have made of Real Madrid under Xabi Alonso so far, from what you've seen of them.
Well, I didn't see the early game. I saw the last one. And they went back to, or reverted back to how Xabi Alonso always played at Bayer Leverkusen, particularly in the first season when they went undefeated, which was with the back three. And he played with two holding midfielders. Strangely, Goulet was one of them, alongside Valverde, and it left Bellingham playing as the furthest forward of the midfield players. And he almost played with two up front, although Vinny Jr. sort of at times went out towards the left-hand side. He was up front with Gonzalo Garcia. And he played with two wing-backs, Alexander Arnold, who I think suited to playing as a right wing-back, and then Fran Garcia down the left-hand side. So I think we can see more. I think we're going to see more of this from Xabi Alonso, because that's what I saw at Bayer Leverkusen. And most managers have a philosophy about the way they want to play, and I think that's going to be the case with Xabi Alonso. He's got the players to play that system, although he's maybe a centre-half short at the moment. Tchouameni playing as a centre-half. Because he knows the system and he knows the pitfalls and the strengths of it.
He's got the players to play. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, Robert talked about early in the competition that he didn't catch. I actually did. I haven't caught many like Robert. Was it Al Hilal they played? I think it was early in the competition. And they were very sluggish in that game. It was very... And I think Thibaut Courtois touched on it, saying like... And it was quite derogatory in a sense to Ancelotti, saying it was going to take us a bit of time to get out of the Ancelotti way of playing. But the Ancelotti way of playing was really successful for him. Unfortunately, it fell flat in the last season when he couldn't. And I think this is going to be Alonso's big problem, and whether it's a change of shape or not, is Ancelotti in that final 12 months must have banged his head every night in his bedroom wall thinking, what's the right balance for this team? What's the right personnel? And I know he had injuries, but everybody has injuries. What's the right formula to get the best out of this particular squad of players? And he struggled. He struggled from match day one in I think it was Las Palmas last year. And it was the odd sort of peak, but there was a lot of that. And then there was a lot of flatness. And I think, and that, on top of the problems he had with having to give Vinicius Jr. a kick up the backside, amongst one or two others, and that's going to be all of Alonso's problems. I think we'll get another picture of it maybe in these games, but also in pre-season, which we're not at yet. I mean, we have to finish this competition. Players will have a rest of some sort. Then there'll be pre-season. I think that will give Alonso time to reflect on what he's seen in this competition. So, in some sense for him, even though I'm not a believer at all in this tournament, and I've made that clear, in some sense for him, being a new manager at a club with so much pressure, if they don't get too many injuries through all these games, it could be beneficial for him to get more of a look at his players before the pre-season starts and then the league season starts, because he's getting to understand them more. Whereas Alexi Lewis, Enrique and Vincent Kompany and all the others, they know what they've got. Xabi Alonso's looking at his players and thinking, right, I've got this tournament, then I've got a rest to go away and think about it and come back and formulate the best system.
Do you think he needs to know more about the players, their technical ability or their characters? Because that was one of the things that I was shocked about last year, the character of some of the Real Madrid players.
I think his biggest concern... Well, in my opinion, it's twofold. I think there's definitely a problem there in terms of the system they played last year, and I know you weren't particularly impressed with Bellingham last year, and I get that. How do you get a better Bellingham? How do you get a better Vinicius? How do you get a better Mbappe in terms of performances? His numbers were good, but his performances weren't always great. How do you manage to negate the fact that Kroos is gone and was gone a year, and Modric is going, and all this sort of stuff? How do you get that balance right? But you're spot on. One of the biggest jobs he has, and as you know, because you've coached, of any manager, is walking in and going, what does he need? What does he need? How do you deal with him?
Quite often, the hardest players to deal with are the biggest players. The ones that are your main players. The ones that are your creative players. The ones that can go and win your games. They're the ones that want to do what they want to do. And sometimes, if you're working on it as a team shape, and this is what we want to do, and Xabi Alonso, I think, is a lot stronger manager, or he'll demand certain things from his players, which Ancelotti probably didn't. Ancelotti was more laissez-faire, let the players deal with it and all that sort of stuff. But going back to your point about Bellingham, or my point about Bellingham last season, when we're talking about playing with a back three and possibly Alexander-Arnold playing as a right wing-back, they're the ideal combination. If he plays with two holding midfield players and Bellingham sitting in front, if there's one player that would love balls coming into the box from Alexander-Arnold, which that's his strength, it will be Jude Bellingham. So maybe he can get back to the form we saw in the first season.
But if there ever was a manager for just understanding and getting the best out of players without overcoaching, for the most part, it was Ancelotti.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, correct.
Because I'm not saying like a father figure in a sense, and he did, tell me a time he threw his players under the bus. Really under the bus. I mean, he brought up the fact that he had to tell Vinicius Junior to start running and he was coming off. But he rarely ever just slung his players under the bus. He always sort of protected them. He generally got it right. Last year he did not. At Bayern Munich he did not. If you think back, our ex-colleague Ralf Honigstein touched on it at the time that when he got sacked at Bayern, it was because the hierarchy and even the players thought it was too lax.
Yeah.
Where he thought he was just letting the players get on with it, and then it became a little bit of a shambles. So there is a balance there, and it's whether or not some of these big superstars who will look up to Xabi Alonso as a player, and I suppose for what he did at Leverkusen, but he's still in his infancy as a coach, and will they treat him with some disrespect when the proverbial hits the fan, as it usually does?
Well, and that's where I think that, if you read between what Courtois said and the big difference between, you have the guy that kind of was like, hey, let's find a way to get this done. And now you're going to have somebody new coming in and saying, hey, you know how you kind of walked around here a little bit? No, you need to press, and you need to step here, and you need to cover in here, and you need that. And say, well, wait a minute. I've just spent a couple years where I got to kind of do what I wanted as long as the results came. So yeah, it's how much Xabi Alonso is given to change what needs to be changed, and how much above him says, hey, you can do this, but don't upset this guy too much, because
he's got to be brave. He's going to have to be brave at times, and if Vinicius Junior is not playing well and not running around, right, off you come. Yeah. And Vinicius Junior has to react one way or the other, and if he reacts in a bad way, then Xabi Alonso's got a problem. If he reacts in a good way, he's done his job.
Right.
It's going to be a difficult time for him.
But he is. You saw Leverkusen. You saw a lot of Leverkusen. He is a horses for courses manager. Well, he certainly has been. If you look back at his team selections last year, he did alter things when Florian Wirtz was not available.
Yeah.
When Wirtz was not available, he didn't just say, all right, I'll put somebody else in there and we'll play the same way. He quite often went to like 5 in midfield, and he had 3 at the back, or sometimes he'd even go 4 at the back and change the midfield because Florian Wirtz was injured or suspended. So he has made changes.
Does that mean we're not going to see Vinicius Junior and Mbappe play? Because he did that on several occasions. He never played with a centre forward. Remember the game? There was a big game. There was a massive
Bayern
game.
Munich.
Bayern Munich.
And they had all
they needed to win.
And they had all the possession.
Yeah, they had all the possession. He didn't have a centre forward on.
Didn't he have Patrick Schick on the bench?
Yeah, he could write him on in like the dying minute.
Boniface and Patrick Schick, he waited till the 92nd minute to bring on Patrick Schick.
But the point is, like, and Wirtz is a brilliant player. Obviously, he's made this big move. But he kind of built everything around Florian Wirtz. Is he going to try and do that at Bayern, at Real Madrid with, let's be honest, Mbappe's the big star there.
He is the big star.
Is he going to try?
But obviously, at the start of this competition, Mbappe's been sick, Frank, and so we've seen a breakout star in Gonzalo Garcia, which must be very nice for Xabi Alonso.
As Craig said, Mbappe has the numbers for him. but the involvement of Garcia was exactly what we are looking for from Mbappe, and that was lacking last season. So of course, Xabi Alonso will give the chance to Mbappe to start and to show his strengths, and if he keeps on scoring, he's going to play, and Gonzalo Garcia is going to be either on the bench or maybe at Chelsea, we never know. But the thing is, Mbappe will finally need somebody above him, meaning the coach, the boss, to tell him the truth of what he wants, and if he doesn't get what he wants, get out. That's what's going to happen to him. It's going to happen to Vinicius Junior and maybe to Jude Bellingham. And I would say finally, because that's what we are looking for. We want players involved because Real Madrid is a big club and last season wasn't enough. So it's going to be interesting to see how it works. And if Mbappe doesn't do the job, yeah, they have Gonzalo Garcia. So, and he has proven that he's ready. It's going to be too big for the moment to be the striker of Real Madrid. But I think the guy can be a good future.
Okay, there you go. Make sure to keep up to date with everything that's going on with Real Madrid and in the Club World Cup right here on ESPN FC. Frank, thank you so much for being with us. We'll speak to you again very soon. Welcome into the latest edition of Extra Time. We have Craig, Robbo and Casey here in the studio. Nice to be back, Robbo.
Absolutely.
Yeah, here for a little while now.
Yeah, 10 days apparently.
10 days.
A little time in New York as well.
A little time in New York.
I think, are you travelling there?
Yeah, one day, but I don't think we're there on the same day.
Good job.
You came in on tactical retreat day?
Yes. Yeah.
Our first question, actually, Casey, for Robbo. As an Englishman, is today one of your least favourite days on the calendar? That would be July 4th.
It doesn't recognise with me one little bit. You know, I know the history and the Boston Tea Party and all that sort of stuff, but when the UK ruled the world and all that sort of stuff, long time ago. So it doesn't matter to me one little bit. The only people I like to rule is the Scots.
They can't even rule themselves over there. not the Scots. England now, they can't, in Britain, London, they can't even rule themselves anymore, can they? They're a shambles. Anyway, we won't get into it.
All right, for all, Stevie said that every game he eats 2 family-sized bags of crisps. Could all of you combined beat him? Also, next year, should Stevie compete in the hot dog eating contest to try and beat Joey Chestnut?
No, he's fat enough.
I mean, can you believe what Chestnut does? How are you going to compete with that?
I was surprised. You know, I came in last night, late last night, and I turned the television on. I thought I'll have a look at some sports channels. On the sports channel was that bloke eating hot dogs at a rate of about 2 per minute.
40 something.
What the hell?
You're a genuine American, is this
I am.
a sport?
Well, I've got my
Casey?
red, white, and blue tie on for 4th of July. No, that's not a sport. It's fun spectacle, and obviously somebody has a talent that I don't know how you find that talent that you can just be a competitive eater, but I'm impressed.
Stevie's tried, hasn't he, over the years?
Yeah, but it can't be good for you, that.
It can't be good for you.
2 family-sized bags of crisps.
He said, well, yeah, 1.5. Yeah, 1 per half.
I'm sure between 4 of us we could do it.
Oh, that we could do,
easy. But Stevie can do it.
You'd be more
with
controlled.
one.
You could do it, but you'd be more controlled.
Yes.
How many hot dogs does that chap eat?
What is it, like 50, 60?
Got to make
70?
Yeah, something like
It
that.
has to make you ill, isn't it, surely?
Well, I can't imagine what it must be like later trying to lay down in bed and you've just...
But we all thought it, because we're also wondering what that would
we
be
know
like
that
too.
as well.
Can't even finish a pizza.
Casey, do you ever wish you played longer in Spain? Or were you ready for a new challenge when you left?
No, it was a tricky situation for me in Spain. When I left England to go to Spain, I had my permanent residency. I didn't have a European passport. And in the 2 years that I played in Spain, the first year you were allowed 5 foreign players. The next year you were allowed 4 foreign players. And the year after that, 3. And
So you're telling me you weren't in the top 3?
As a goalkeeper, as a foreign goalkeeper. And the other problem was, if you're South American and you play in Spain, after 2 years, you get a Spanish passport. So they want to use their foreign players for South American players because then in 2 years, they're a non-foreigner and they either count as a non-foreigner or as you sell them as a non-foreigner. So my mistake is I could have gotten a British passport before I left England. And if I had done that, then I probably would have played a lot longer in Spain.
Who took your place? Lopetegui?
No, Lopetegui pretty much went in and almost became the manager after I left.
Did he?
Yeah. So
You got on very well with him, didn't you?
we had moments
Be
that
honest,
were good and
be
moments
honest.
that weren't. Yes.
So you were a permanent resident in the UK?
Correct. And so because I was gone for 2 years, you can leave for 2 years suspended, and then I could go back, and I went back to Tottenham, and I still held my permanent residency. So it was a little, I mean, some of those issues when you're a foreign player, you don't exactly get to just say, hey, I want to play here. It doesn't work that way.
What could have been, hey, Casey?
It was fun. I really thoroughly enjoyed my time in Madrid, no question.
Robbo, if Amorim had to keep one of these Manchester United players on his squad next season, who do you think should stay among Rashford, Antony, Garnacho or Sancho?
Well, there's only one that's actually performed on a regular basis. That's Garnacho. I mean, I know he's got problems. I'm not sure he's the most consistent of characters. I'm not sure he's a consistent footballer, but he's the one that has changed games on a couple of occasions when he's come on. The other players, Sancho's can never go back to Manchester United, I don't think, and be a player. Antony, hasn't been good enough there. I don't think it'd be impossible for him to resurrect his career there. And of course, Rashford, I mean, over the last 2 years, he's been, and I like to use this word, he's been a disgrace at times, his attitude.
No, they're all going back. They're all going
Well,
back.
because, I mean, obviously, Antony had a great spell when he got to Betis, but Betis is not going to spend the money that it would take to get him on a permanent basis. So,
And first of all, if Amorim sticks to his guns and says, this is the system I want to play, there is no place for Antony. They don't play with Michael.
I'm presuming Betis were only paying a very small fraction.
I'm sure they took
Antony's salary.
Yeah. And then you got to put a transfer fee along with that. Not happening.
How long does Amorim last, though? That's the question.
Well,
Those players might come to the fore again.
well, the interesting thing is if he's just going to continue with this, this is the way I play, 3 at the back, 4, 2, 1, whatever it is, wasn't very flexible at all. It'd be interesting to see if he just continues that. I mean, I don't see any reason why he wouldn't, because he's been so steadfast. But certainly we can't say, well, it wasn't successful. It was pretty much a disaster. And he's talked about, when I get my players, but how do you get those players to play when we've just mentioned 4, and there are many others, who they're going to struggle to get out?
Well, yeah, that's the problem. I think when you're at a club like Man U and you pay the way you have, either you're paying major pieces of their salaries and super reduced transfers just to get rid of players, and that player's thinking, well, wait a minute, why am I leaving? So, yeah, I think he's got a lot of work to do, and maybe...
I could see him being gone by Christmas.
I could see him being gone by Christmas, but I could also see somebody needing 3 or 4 transfer windows to get rid of the players eventually, to then have the space to be able to bring in the players you want. And as you mentioned, he's not going to be given that kind of time.
But you have to, when you first go to a football club, doesn't matter whether you've got the squad you want or not, you've got to have an impact on the team.
Yes.
He hasn't had an impact on the team, he's had a reverse impact. They've been worse.
All right, Casey, who's on your Mount Rushmore for US men's national team goalkeepers?
Oh, no. Well, you think of kind of the 3 of us from, Friedel, Tim, myself, who kind of had the career that we had.
I didn't know if you're going to be able to get that out.
And then...
Which is the one you didn't like, that we always, you never picked. You would never...
You managed to get the words out.
Yeah. Which one is it?
And then you're looking at, from Tony Meola to Marcus Hanneman to Brad Guzan, and, kind of going from there. So I'd have a 6-man Mount Rushmore.
Okay, so you're putting yourself on. You have to do the 3 more.
What do you mean?
So he's Mount Rushmore. He has to pick 4.
No, I said I have a 6. My mountain's bigger.
No.
It's a big mountain.
Well, there's no doubt the top 3 keepers. I mean, him, Brad, Friedel, and
Tim.
Right.
I mean, all played at the highest level for a long period. There is no doubt about that. Brad Guzan played at a good level, didn't he not?
Yeah, Brad. Marcus played great for Reading and Wolves, and.
But there's definitely a drop off without making your head any bigger. I mean, there's a little bit.
So, like I said, the three of us had the careers that, and then other guys had really, really good careers, and I think then it just kind of becomes. Look, Marcus is one of my best friends. We do stuff constantly. What?
Who was?
Now you've dropped
No, I'm putting Marcus on the Melrose because he is one of my best friends.
Oh, like 3 big heads and then
There
like
you
little
go.
ones underneath.
So I'll ask you the
Not
question.
big ones.
Who was the best of all the goalkeepers that played for the US?
It's up to opinion.
No, I'm asking you.
Look at the little smile in the eyes.
We all had a good run.
If you were the best, you think you were the best.
Not that this is any way to gauge who's the best. I'm only asking out of interest because things happen, injuries. You're not. But how's it rate in terms of who's got the most caps out of you, Tim, and Brad Friedel?
Tim has the most caps. I have the most clean sheets.
Good defences you played in front of them.
It must have been. Yes, because that's how everybody talks about the U.S. national team, that they were so much better back then than they are now.
Okay, Robbo, Craig and Kay, which do you prefer for a July 4th barbecue? Hot dogs or hamburgers, and ketchup or brown sauce?
Hamburgers, brown sauce.
I wouldn't eat hamburgers and I wouldn't eat sausages. I'd have a chicken drumstick probably and brown sauce. Brown sauce all the time.
Okay, yeah.
Why not sauce? Why you're gone off? What's that word?
You have the meat.
I don't have.
What's it called? Somebody that doesn't eat meat.
I don't know. I
he's eating chicken.
You're not having red meat.
I don't eat. I don't
You're not having red meat.
Vegetarian, vegan, you've gone all
Hybrid.
Hybrid.
What about if we get you one of those plant-based burgers? Would you eat one of those?
No, they're all right.
seen the chemicals
I'd
in
have
those
chicken or
things?
turkey or chicken. That's my choice for me.
But it is brown sauce.
Brown sauce all the time. Although I do say probably my favourite breakfast if I'm in a hotel, and I had one this morning.
Okay.
Would be a bacon sandwich. So I do eat some.
Ketchup's for kids, isn't it?
Yeah.
Ketchup's
and you
for
have
brown sauce is the
brown
winner.
sauce on your
Yes.
on your bacon.
You didn't have a fry up?
No, not today. No.
Not today. Very healthy.
I like egg. I've scrambled egg and a little bit of bacon.
Oh, so we should ask you to end. If you could only have one of the 3 for the rest of your life, breakfast, lunch or dinner, what would you have?
Breakfast.
Breakfast.
Without doubt, breakfast.
Okay. Stevie said breakfast as well.
Apparently Stevie's very, he really loves an Eggs Benedict in the morning.
I like an Eggs Benedict.
Huh?
I like an Eggs Benedict.
What's the sauce they put on it?
Hollandaise.
You got to go light on the Hollandaise.
You gotta-
but,
He
yeah.
doesn't.
I was tongue in cheek there.
Oh, were you?
Because when Eggs Benedict was mentioned,
Oh,
It's a little too cultured.
what does he eat?
Little
Like
too
3
cultured for
things
Stevie.
anyway, like across the board.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
his scale of
his
That's
culinary experiences are extremely limited.
Anyway, that will do it for the latest edition of Extra Time. Happy 4th, everybody. Thanks for sending in your questions.